Welcome to the intersection of city politics and everyday life. I'm Brian Lehrer. Today, our panel takes a hard look at this week's debate between Mayor de Blasio, Republican State Assemblywoman Nicole Malliotakis, and Independent Bo Dietl, former New York City police detective. Our goal, to separate the self-serving rhetoric from the city's actual problems and its progress. Not easy. It was a bit of a circus at Symphony Space on Manhattan's Upper West Side, to tell you the truth. The crowd was rowdy, the mayor's opponents aggressive. We will get with our panel shortly. But first, let's go to the stage to get a sense of this wild debate. The mayor's plan was clearly to paint his two opponents as Trump supporters and to repeat his accomplishments.
You know, sometimes there are elections where...
Moderator Errol Lewis quieted the crowd enough for the mayor to start again.
Sometimes there are elections where people feel that the candidates are all alike. You're not going to have that problem this time. My two opponents are right-wing Republicans who voted for Donald Trump. I'm a proud Democrat. I'm a proud progressive. And here's what we have done together in the last 4 years.
Over the still boisterous crowd, the mayor went on to say New York is the safest big city in America. There are more jobs here than ever, graduation rates are up, and parents have pre-K for their kids. I was among the questioners, and when I asked GOP challenger Nicole Malliotakis whether she could do a better job than the mayor for voters who care about inequality, she responded,
well, thank you, Mr. Lehrer. Appreciate the question. The reality is that this mayor ran on a platform to lift people out of poverty, and he has done nothing to close the gap on income inequality. And as a matter of fact, if you look at the real tale of two cities, it's that his friends and donors have gotten richer while the rest of us continue to struggle. And when you look at the affordability, he talks about affordable housing, and he brags about 75,000 or so apartments created. But the reality is that's not true. Those are mostly preserved units with a small amount, maybe being additional units. But less than 11% of those units are for those individuals who earn roughly $25,000 or, only around 11% of those are for $25,000 or less income.
The mayor shot back. The Malliotakis had voted in Albany against the minimum wage. Bo Dietl basically accused de Blasio of doing nothing but long-range planning and being an elitist college boy, pal of the rich. And about Dietl's own vote for Trump?
I got to clear something up. I'm a registered Democrat, and I do not like Donald Trump, and I don't like what he's done. And I came out publicly and called him a lying narcissist. So I take exception to that, Mr. Mayor. Now, as far as it goes, I did vote for him, but I would take that vote back for tomorrow.
One of the quieter moments from Dietl, who interrupted the others so much, at one point the host had his microphone turned off. All right, you get the general gist of the debate. Let's dig in. Joining us, City Councilman Ydanis Rodriguez, representing the 10th District, including Washington Heights, Inwood, and Marble Hill. With us as well, Anna Sanders, City Hall reporter for the Staten Island Advance, and Greg David, columnist for Crain's New York Business and director of the Business and Economics Reporting Program at the City University's Graduate School of Journalism. Welcome, all of you.
Thank you, Brian.
Anna, let me start with you and pick up on that clip of Nicole Malliotakis. It sounded like she's got a housing plan that leans more toward the lowest income New Yorkers than de Blasio's, but I'm not sure she's got any such housing plan, does she?
I don't think that she has fleshed out a significant housing plan in the way that she wants people to think she has. She has proposed certain things that the mayor is already doing or trying to do, including increasing the supportive housing units. But as you know, there's some disagreement with the state over how to bring those units online. But nothing that she has proposed is significantly different from the mayor. And I think that's one of the issues where she is leaning a little more liberal than she is on other issues, like policing, for instance, or school safety. But I don't know how exactly she's going to increase affordable housing. It hasn't been entirely clear to me, but I think she primarily wants to work with the governor, is what her outline is.
Because she's an ally of the governor, even though she's a
Not
Republican?
really. She's never been quite that close with the governor and has hit him on various things before, like most elected officials. But her argument is essentially that I'm willing to work with other people in order to get things done, whereas the mayor is feuding with the governor. Sometimes they're on, sometimes they're off in terms of their relationship.
You've noticed that.
Yeah, so I think that is a good argument to make, but she hasn't released a concrete plan in terms of, I will do this thing, it will cost this much over this many years.
So let me stay right on this point and go to another clip. On this subject of inequality, my follow-up with the mayor after the Nicole Malliotakis clip that we just played was, can you, Mr. Mayor, bridge economic divides without exacerbating the political resentments among, the white working class and others that led to Trump? Here's what he said.
Look, we're the safest big city in America. That helps everyone. We have healed a lot of the wounds between police and community and got them working together and communicating better. That helps everyone. We have pre-K for all, We have after school for all middle school kids. These are initiatives that help everyone and lighten everyone's burden. I talk to parents who tell me that pre-K was important to them, whether they're a low-income parent or a middle-class or upper-middle-class parent, that it saved them on average $10,000, $15,000 a year per child. And now we're going to move forward with 3K going forward, a huge savings to families of all different economic backgrounds. So when you look at the things we're doing, I think they help people across the board. But in terms of addressing income inequality, there are, by our estimate, that by the end of this year, 281,000 New Yorkers who were below the poverty level or near the poverty level just 4 years ago will now be out of poverty.
Councilman, I don't know if it's possible to bridge inequality without causing a backlash of conservative resentment. So let me ask you sort of a two-part question. There's a lot of poor people in your district. Has the mayor's set of plans and policies had an impact on poverty in Washington Heights, Inwood, Marble Hill? And do you think it's possible to really have policy tilt toward the poor without and people of color who are poor primarily in New York's case, without having a white backlash?
I believe that it's possible. We as New Yorkers, we always have big dreams, and we are here standing on the shoulder of a lot of men and women that, as the model of your producer here was sharing with me, she is 100 years old, and she went to the school PS 175. So that your producer is standing under the shoulder of her mother, who worked so hard to take in where he is right now. I'm here because there was that generation, the 60s and the 70s, that has that vision. New York City is competing with London and other places. So it should be for the benefit of everyone. Private, public sector to establish partnership and be able to put the best plan in place so that we can lift up more working class to be middle class.
So that's great as a concept. Is he succeeding at it?
I believe it is. We've been investing $285 million that provide incentive to the private sector that create jobs. I believe that his opponent, they should focus on how can we double that amount so that we can increase incentive to create jobs in the underserved communities. Like right now, I'm leading the conversation about the future of Inwood. I brought to the administration, I will only do that rezoning if the economic development of Northern Manhattan is around health and technology. So I believe that he recognized he inherits a city where 50% of New Yorkers live in poverty. That's a tough definition that we have as a city, and that affects everyone. So I believe that he being able to put a lot of things in places. However, I hope to see his opponent, getting into the conversation about how can we take the city for the next 10 and 20 years to do better, closing the gap.
And you kind of got caught in the politics of community activism on housing versus what de Blasio thinks is the solution to affordable housing in New York, his rezoning program, allowing high towers with a certain percentage affordable housing. I think you were leaning toward a particular development on Upper Broadway, and then there was such community pushback that you had to turn around and help nix the plan. What does that tell you about the state of housing politics in
Well,
New York
that's one other area that I disagree with the mayor, and that's why even though I agree with a couple of things, many things, I also have had my disagreement with the mayor. So the Broadway Sherman rezoning was something that I could not agree because the financial was not in place for the time frame that the members of the community wanted to see happening. I believe that now the discussion of Inwood NYC provide us the opportunity to work with the administration, developers, and real estate,
for Upper Manhattan,
and be able to work, attract investors to say, how can we work together to develop affordable housing, as there's going to be a percentage market, but also bring economic development more focused on technology and health.
Let's play another clip. Grace Rao, New York One's political reporter, asked the mayor, was he being fiscally responsible, spending so much money, especially because of the growth in the city workforce? What about pension and health costs down the road?
So at this point in New York City's history, we have the largest reserves we've ever had in a New York City budget. We have the highest bond ratings we've ever had. We're in a very, very strong fiscal position, and we're fiscally responsible. But the investments we made, let me tell you what we invested in. We invested in, first of all, making sure we had those huge reserves. We've never seen anything like this in the history of the city, specifically to protect us against the downturn or against some of the pernicious things we see happening in Washington. That's one piece of it. But also, 2,000 more cops on patrol in New York City in the last 2 years. 2,000 more cops on patrol. Pre-K teachers to make sure our kids get the kind of start they deserved all along in every zip code in this city. The investments we're making are to make this a stronger city.
So, Greg David, compared to talking about crime or Trump or schools or housing, talking about the long-term debt when things seem okay today is hardly sexy, but is the mayor failing in this regard?
No, well, the mayor's exactly right. He has the largest surpluses ever in the reserves in the city to cushion us against a downturn. Of course, the budget's larger than it's ever been before, and significantly, as he admitted, the workforce is larger than it's ever been, and that's important because laying off people is the hardest thing to do when the economic downturn happens. I think the way to look at this is, one, we are on the longest economic expansion in New York City's history. It will come to an end. I don't know if it's coming to an end tomorrow or next year, but it will come to an end. If we have a downturn like the last one, meaning a mild one, he's got 18 months, maybe 24 months at the outside to cushion it. If it's more severe, he doesn't have that long. And in an interesting little development lately, the governor's decided those reserves are too high because he's trying to force the mayor to start to use them to help HHC, to fund the subways, whatever. So it's interesting that politically the surplus is the reserves are a really good thing, but they become a target for the governor.
Let's talk some politics. Greg, I'll stay with you on this. In blue New York, we had 20 years of Bloomberg and Giuliani. It took until, between David Dinkins ending his term in 1993 to de Blasio getting elected in 2013 for another Democrat to be elected mayor of New York. So in theory, a smart, big tent Republican can win a mayoral election in New York City.
Not anymore. Not anymore. First of all, such a person can't win in an era of Trump. Trump's poll ratings in New York are the lowest Quinnipiac has ever seen anywhere. But beyond that, Republicans, Giuliani and Bloomberg, have won because the city has been in crisis. And you would need an enormous crisis on the levels that the two of them came into office for to get the conditions. Secondly, you can only win now if you are as a Republican, if you're extraordinarily independently wealthy, the way Michael Bloomberg was, so you can spend. What did he spend? $60 million the first time, escalating to $100 million the third time. That's the only way a Republican can win. So in the foreseeable future, no, a Republican can't win.
And the polls are lopsided. It doesn't appear to be a close race. So Anna, who was Nicole Malliotakis' real audience last night? Was it just other Staten Islanders to whom she may campaign for some higher office than Assembly?
I think that she was both talking to her current constituents and Staten Islanders as a whole, as well as upset Democrats, because I think there is some vulnerability there on the mayor's side. He hasn't really addressed the homelessness issue. There is a rising budget, you know, loosening certain, like public urination, those types of things, quality of life, those are issues that people care about. And I think there are unhappy Democrats, particularly among white voters, who would like an alternative to the mayor. So I think that that's who she was trying to talk to. I think that she struggles sometimes to walk that tightrope between more conservative voters in her current district and people who have known her for a longer time and trying to reach out to different people. But I mean, yeah, like Greg said, I really don't think a Republican could win after Trump unless Trump were doing extremely well and, you know, meeting certain obligations that he's set himself up for. I think that part of the problem too is that the mayor has just been very lucky. He was lucky in 2013 when Anthony Weiner's campaign imploded. He is lucky now that there hasn't been a downturn. Every time he wants, like someone wants to do something, for instance, extending the beach season, they've done that because we have the money. And it's those little things that kind of add up to the point where we have an enormous budget now. And I think those are going to be the first to go. And he's really lucky it didn't happen before November.
You mentioned public disorder, and though major crimes by and large are down, like the murder rate is on track to be probably the lowest in modern recorded history in the city this year. She picked on this issue, and the audience was very responsive to the issue of crime last night. Malliotakis was asked by Juan Manuel Benitez from New York One Noticias what policies she would change as mayor, and she said she would keep to what past mayors like Koch and Giuliani have done.
But I disagree with this mayor's policy that takes individuals who have been convicted of crimes such as sex abuse, grand larceny, patronizing a child for prostitution. I disagree with that policy fundamentally, and I believe it needs to change. So there is a huge contrast between the mayor and I, beginning with quality of life crimes, beginning with those that we are protecting, and also I disagree with his selection of judges. As I pointed out before, the judge that he appointed allowed someone with 31 prior arrests come in for robbery to be released on the street to kill an
Mr. De Blasio, because many police reform activists feel you didn't go far enough. The broken windows policing style is still in place. Police disciplinary records have not been made public. You don't support the Right to Know Act. What would you say to these police reform activists that supported you 4 years ago?
I'll speak to that, but first I have to respond to what you just heard. What you heard from the Assembly member were classic right-wing Republican scare tactics. For 4 straight years. 4 straight years.
We just had a child who was murdered in the classroom.
Anyone who denies that crime is going down consistently in New York City is denigrating the hard work of the men and women of the NYPD.
Whoa. So, Councilman, all the shouting by the audience last night, and this doesn't represent the city. This is the people who came there more or less in 3 camps, you know, ticketed by the candidates themselves. I tend to think it was instigated by Bo Dietl and Dietl supporters on a kind of chaos theory. You know, like Trump feels that he benefits from chaos breaking out, and the backlash ultimately benefits him. That was one of his organizing principles in the campaign, still is as president. And so I think it was that. And then the Malliotakis supporters and the de Blasio supporters felt compelled to respond by making a lot of noise of their own. How did you hear it?
Look, that's New York City. We've been in all the debate. We're in the previous candidates, as we say, like, from Ferrer to Green to Green and Bloomberg, like, there's always going to be the opportunity for candidates to bring their supporter. So I think that the most important for the candidates, in this case, Mayor de Blasio, to keep focused on what he has done. As someone that I was arrested in 1989, because 1992, it was my first year taking political science 101 at City College and learning about my constitutional rights. And I was giving a flyer, 181st in San Nick. And I was told, move from there. And I thought that I had my right. And they say, you got to move from here right now. So, of course, college student, I kept going my flyer. I was arrested. Huh. And there was a article, editorial in the Diario de Prensa that said, there's no freedom on 181st. So I lived those years where,
Didn't you get arrested again, like on purpose, with the Occupy movement?
I've been participating in a number of civil disobedience under the Vieques or the Arizona immigrant law. So I believe that civil disobedience in a peaceful manner is something that is part of our society. But what I say is about, I live the 80s when we have 104 homicide in Washington Heights, compared to last year that we only have 4. So we have quality life issues in our community. But today's issue is not the same as so numbers of people being killed. Neither the relationship between the police and the community is the same. Today in Washington Heights, I organize against police brutalities in the 80s and the 90s. And I believe that there's still room to grow. However, getting rid of the stop and frisk, training and retraining the NYPD to be sure that the law enforcement, they speak to whoever they are doing the arrest in a way that they do their job with respect. It's part of this administration.
Why do you think crime has gone down so dramatically in your district, as well as around the city in general, but you would know your district the best, so dramatically? How much police tactics, how much other things?
I think it's both. I think that one is we have seen a decrease on employment in our city. And I believe that also when there's not jobs, it also incentivize a percentage of individuals to try to make it in a different way. The second thing is that there has been a new way of how members of the NYPD are establishing relationship with the members of the community. So now we are not waiting for a sham bill to happen or Eric Garner to happen in our community to bring members of the interfaith, business leaders and members of the NYPD in a room to talk about how can we continue improving the relationship between the police and the community.
Now, remember, Bo Dietl, the candidate, third-party candidate last night, is a former NYPD detective. Here's 15 seconds of what he said.
Here's what I would do, and you want to know something, all we hear is this and that. There's a reason why 9 out of 10 New York City cops said they would leave New York City and find another job. The reason is him.
The reason is him. What were you going to say?
I was going to say that I think part of why people think crime is up is because back 20 years ago, you could not read a newspaper article in every murder. It just wasn't possible. Now, flash forward to now, 2017, there's maybe like a murder a day at most, sometimes more. And that means that it's given more attention than those crimes back in the day were. And I think another aspect of this is people think quality of life is down because they see more homeless people on the street. And de Blasio has struggled to first admit that there was more homeless on the street, but I think a lot of it, and this is something that a former social worker has told me, the police aren't arresting homeless people as often. They're not being sent to Rikers right away. They're not being forced to do treatment or anything like that. So they stay on the streets longer, and it gives the appearance that the city is in chaos. There's more people who are homeless, when in reality, the increase in homelessness is people who can't afford rent, not necessarily the street homeless.
Interesting. Greg, we didn't hear last night, and I don't know if it's just because nobody asked, was term 2 plan.
Because there are
Blasio. He had the marquee things at the beginning: pre-K, paid sick leave, the housing plan. No?
There are none. I interviewed at least 6 top members of the administration for a major piece I did for Crain's. Not one of them had anything interesting to say for the second term. When I confronted First Deputy Mayor Anthony Shores on this issue, he said to me, I'm working on a few things, but wouldn't tell me what they are. Look, I disagree with you. The debate last night was a body blow to New York political discourse. It was so dysfunctional, so out of control, and we have gotten a situation where no one is talking substantive policies. Malliotakis hasn't come up with a single substantive policy. Bo Dietl shouldn't have been on the stage. And the mayor's been able to coast to re-election without announcing a single new idea. This is not good. What happened last night is really bad for the future of New York. And after the election, somebody's got to take a look. Some civic group has got to convene thought leaders to say, how do we fix this serious flaw in our political system?
But accepting that the debate last night was a debacle, why not think that this was a one-off that was a function of Dietl being on the stage, and that when we have the second debate, which is a major candidates-only debate on CBS on November 1st, that'll just be Malliotakis and de Blasio, and I don't even know if they'll have an audience, that will go back to politics, quote unquote, as usual, much more substantive.
Well, that'll be a step in the right direction, but we won't have any new policies. The mayor's got no reason to do any. As far as I can tell, no one in the administration is working on any. Malliotakis has come up with nothing on her own. This will not benefit New York in the long term if we don't have people with new policies. Now, one thing I'm writing for Monday is maybe that's because the members of the administration plan to leave after the election. That would not be unusual for there to be a lot of turnover. Well, that would be good because new people would come in wanting to have new ideas. But this is not a good thing that's taken place ever since no serious Democrat decided to enter the race.
So let me go ahead, Anna.
I was going to say that I think part of the problem, too, is that a lot of his ideas are things that he's going to do later on. And he's putting off tough decisions. No new jails announced, except for when the Queens came up with one.
I think that was Dietl's most substantive attack last night, was the mayor has all these 10-year plans, 10 years to close Rikers, 10 years to place some homeless
that
shelters.
One's a 5-year plan, but most of them are 10-year
basically.
plans.
So in our last 15 minutes, Councilman, what would you like to see happen in the second term? In our last 15 seconds, what would you like to see in the second term? Any #1 policy priority?
I believe that we still can do better on education. We cannot, attack or, go after Donald Trump and not recognizing that we have the most segregated educational system in the nation. I believe that our children deserve better. I believe that even though we have seen improvement, and this is not only the contribution of this administration, even though they have made major contribution, but we are doing better in the school in the last 20 years. But still, only 48% of the students, they are college readiness. And we have to prepare our students to go to college because they are our middle class.
Thanks to all of you for joining us, to be continued, obviously. And that's our program for today. I'm here each week at this hour at the intersection of city politics and everyday life. Next time, Puerto Rico, an update on the hurricane recovery efforts, and 5 years after Sandy, this month is the 5-year anniversary, how ready is New York City for the next superstorm? More resilient or just as vulnerable? Join us for that next week. I'm Brian Lehrer. Thanks for watching.